Hello, and welcome to Royale Without Cheese, our bi-weekly podcast in which we discuss both the classic and the unknown of art and popular cinema from the then and now. We are your hosts, me, Leonardo Miranda, Miguel Aido,
Hello.
and Tomás Ferreira.
Hey.
As part of our Christmas special, today we talk about Edward Scissorhands. But before any ado, don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, or simply give us a like. Edward Scissorhands is a 1990 gothic fantasy film directed by Tim Burton. Starring Johnny Depp and Winona Ryder, it tells the story of an unfinished artificial humanoid with scissors for hands, who is taken in by a suburban family and falls in love with their teenage daughter. Burton conceived of the film from his childhood upbringing, with the story later adapted by screenwriter Carolyn Thompson. Being the fourth collaboration between Burton and composer Danny Elfman, plus the last film appearance by known macabre actor Vincent Price, Edward Scissorhands was a critical and commercial success, cited by the director himself as his most personal work to this day. Nevertheless, what did RWC think of this rom-com emo Frankenstein? Did we mellow, or were our hearts cut into little pieces? Fellas, dive in. What do we say?
What do we say?
Also, you mentioned the fourth collaboration between Danny Elfman and Tim Burton. It was also the first one between Johnny Depp and Tim Burton.
Exactly true.
Which later became a very close
friendship. Yeah, exactly. This was the beginning of the framed friendship, and I think it bears fruit, as one would say, in the good old Bible. I don't know why you choose this expression. It bears fruit in the sense that Johnny Depp is really the heart and soul of this movie, I have to say. Because let's face it, Edward Scissorhands, if you really look into it from a realistic point of view, you can't. You know, you may look into it like Gary Oldman looked into it when he was proposed the role of Edward Scissorhands the first time around before Johnny Depp got the script. Because if you heard that story, Gary Oldman, there's a clip going around of Gary Oldman with Kevin Costner kind of doing press for another movie. And he says that he got the proposal for the role, and he was like, "A guy has scissors for hands? A little castle down the street? What is this? Nah, you're out of your mind." Goes to the movie, 2 minutes in, "Oh, I get what you mean." So, completely, it's that thing you say, Len, you read the script, you have another vision that the director has in the movie, then it's another thing. But it's to say, where am I going with this? Is that the movie, in its fantastical elements, this is what Tim Burton, I think, thrives at, which is creating this whole atmosphere in collaboration with these other artists in the production design, in the visual effects, that is just wondrous in connection, and whimsical in connection with these more darker elements that he's capable of conjuring. And so in style, he's great at it, from the beginning with these little models of this little tiny world of the dark house at the end of the street that combines himself with this little suburbia vision that is really on a whole nother world. It's not really realistic. It's not 50s suburbia, really, because everything feels like a little snow globe. It's inside this little snow globe. All of it. It's not just the castle. It's every single thing. And even the other characters, not just Edward Scissorhands, are unrealistic, but in a way that it just makes you go with it. I think you don't really question it. Nevertheless, the one thing that I was pointing out in the beginning of what I was saying in my argument, that there are certain things that do bother me a little. Like, the thing that bothers me a little is the fact that we do have a guy with scissors for hands, so that should give pause to thought. Like, whatever reality or fantasy, it's a guy with scissors for hands, and and to that effect, you have the fact that it's Johnny Depp. He makes it work. He makes it work because he just has these puppy dog eyes working for him, and there's just this lovable thing that you just feel pity for him and an inherent empathy for him. The power of the performances in this movie, coming from even the smallest characters, and this is what I mean. He's such a director that has such a panache for style and creating a world that is both whimsical and dark, that you just feel inherently attracted to it. The way he uses light in this, the way he really cherishes the production design, is something to be in awe with. And that said, you can really overlook the underdeveloped characters who are really just caricatures in this world. I mean, so much so that not just Edward Scissorhands is the character is a caricature, everything else is a caricature. To that effect, yes, Johnny Depp is kind of the treasure, the cherry on top of all of this, because he can do so much with what he's given in terms of the makeup and all of that. Because the Caesars, god damn it, it's like, again, I look at them and I'm like, an inventor decided to give this guy scissors for hands. I mean, let's think about this. It's like, why? It's not practical. The guys, it's a hard, it's a risk hazard for the guy using them, those scissors, and the other people around him. Why? Why, Vincent Price, did you decide to give these guys? And it's like, oh, it's temporary.
Let me
It's the
intervene.
idea
Yeah.
that this is unfinished. This is an unfinished product, and you decide to give your unfinished product scissors. It's a fine, it's
No.
supposed to be.
It's unfinished as a man with scissors, because he was not
Mm.
supposed to end up like that. I mean, he was
No, I know,
offered hands and then he
But even
died.
then, like,
But how
give
did
him
the
something
scissors get
else.
there? Like he had to put them there, right?
Exactly.
Like,
Why is
Sure.
he? Out of everything that you could have given this man, you give him scissors, and I
I
kind
think
of
there's better
it's
things
fantasy.
to be temporary hands.
Exactly.
But I think that the point was that it was sort of a human tool thing, because you see the whole production line
Yeah,
with the different robotic hands and utensils being used. And you kind of think he's another piece of that as well. So he's a little better in terms that he's a human and you can give him orders. But at the end of the day, I think it's just another tool. And I think then the part where you see that he's being offered hands is kind of like the rise to being a full-bodied person with complete human anatomy. But I think because that is interrupted, he's kind of left in that incomplete state. So at least that's how I see it. I mean,
I do think that's the implication, is that he was already a tool before, maybe because there's that whole assembly line of tools, of machines that have a purpose. And then I think he took one of those machines who is a tool, and maybe Edward was like a guy who cut
Maybe.
shit.
Yeah.
And then he's like, oh, I'm gonna turn this machine, this specific one, into a human. I don't
Yeah,
know
it's
why that
possible.
one. That's a bit like, maybe go with some other that's a little safer, but still.
Exactly. No, that makes sense. I think that's the thing. The film leaves enough ambiguity for you to put any explanation on why he is the way he is. I kind of didn't think it that way, but that makes sense, perfectly sense. Now that makes more sense, that because I thought he was built from scratch because he wanted, his Geppetto wanting a Pinocchio, so he built it from scratch. But if he took something that was already existing and with a function, that could also be it, because it's not explained in the movie. To that effect, maybe they could have shown a little something more. Maybe him picking up a toy. I don't know. Maybe it's that story. There wasn't a click. So maybe, when you see him putting the cookie heart on top of that humanoid guy, maybe that could have been the click there. It was for you, it wasn't for me. But I have to say, other things that this movie conjures in very well are these beautiful moments of visual flair in the editing and the performance of the actors, together with the production design that is really heartwarming, and together with, I think, the music, the score by Danny Elfman is doing a lot of the heavy lifting here as well. Because Danny Elfman, I mean, I have to insert a joke here. He's kind of the voice of Tim Burton in every so other movie, because when you hear the oh, dun, 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 it's Burton. Okay, here he comes, with his shtick. The opening of this is very much, well, it's a precursor to Batman Returns, because he opens the same way, unveiling kind of the underworld of the Penguin, showing us the setting with this very dark hue lighting, which is very interesting. But I was just kind of discussing the editing with the performances. I really love these little moments that really give you a channel into the interiority of the characters. that really endears you to the movie, and you can then forgive these little things like the scissor hands. Does it work? Does it not work? Like, for example, Vincent Price, you have this beautiful moment where he finally kisses Kim, and they finally embrace, and he cuts into this flashback where he's given the hands, and it kind of interconnects this moment of finally receiving warmth, receiving bodily warmth, like a real world connection with somebody else for the first time in years, is connected with the moment where he receives his hands with his father. And that moment is, Johnny Depp plays it so, beautifully, and with such sympathy for the character. And you see then the result of that, the dream so close and yet so far away, is then betrays him, because the father, Vincent Price, dies in front of him, almost with no words. You just see a shift in his eyes, his old man eyes, going kaput, and going down, and then the scissors piercing the hands. I thought that was a beautiful moment. And also, of course, the other wondrous moment of the film that is ingrained in my head since the first time I saw it as a kid is really when he's cutting that big chunk of ice, and Winona Ryder is just receiving the rain, and that is also very tender. Yeah, those are some of the moments that get really a powerful punch.
I enjoyed that, especially at the end where it suggests that he's the one creating the snow in the town.
Yeah,
At
yeah.
least that's I thought it was very well connected with the story in the beginning, where we're introduced to this older woman. We don't know who she is, but yeah, she's telling the story about winter. And really, the story never goes there again until eventually the end. So it's nice going back to that little detail. I thought it was well put. I mean, you were saying something before about the caricature of the characters, and I just wanted to point out that I think that, I mean, it's very purposeful. I think what it is that they're doing with these characters, these women living next to him. At least I didn't interpret as necessarily being sort of a lack of development of these characters. It's meant to be a caricature of this
Oh
suburban
no,
life.
for sure. I know, I know. I see it the same way.
But I saw in a sense that I didn't think I needed to see more of these characters, more of these a further explanation of who these people are. It just worked for me well as just character, even if they are very similar to one another. Although they aren't, because there are some that have specific traits, like that sort of the main antagonist lady that hates on him. You can see that there are a couple of things developed there, but ultimately, I think as a character, it works well. At least that's how I saw it. Outside of the main characters.
I understand it's the purpose of it. Like, I see it's intentional. And the film as the world is very, in a way, it's very simple in terms of how people act. And I think that works towards building uh, their fascination with Edward himself. If it was like a realistic world, it would be unbelievable in how easily they are
No,
like, "Oh wow, this
yeah,
guy, wow, he's really cool."
yeah.
Like, but I don't know. It also annoyed me a lot, especially those women. I think they're so why I don't know. I don't see how it needed to go in that route of them just hounding the place and hounding him all the time and being so annoying. I don't know. I feel like there could be something more to them, even if it's
Yeah,
in
I agree.
this caricatural
Yeah,
register.
yeah.
It just feels too easy, just too easy to make. Oh yeah, they're all superficial people and
Because
annoying in
that's
this sense.
okay. Because I'm okay with that superficiality for the first, quarter or 2 quarters
Hmm.
of the movie. It has a kind of setup, and what is their general natural behavior towards anything that comes up as special in their lives. They're kind of these hound dogs who want this pet for themselves. They try to integrate him in his society. They use him. They want to have the little special, gift that is this bizarre man, so they can parade them around town. And he's my personal whatever hairdresser and whatnot. To use his function. And I get that for the most part. But then you need to go a little step further, I think, in the development of who is this town as a whole, these superficial people. And I don't think we go there. And I think this is kind of a symptom of Tim Burton's work as a whole. What really helps him, I think, is that he's very good at creating these atmospheres of this cross between the whimsical and the dark, this place of an odd strangeness coming from the world of death and ghouls and etc., but also with a certain childlike charm that really wins you over for sure, and that is really something that always attracts me back to his movies. But at the same time, it is inherent that whether you watch the Batman from 1989 or this movie or some others, his character development always leaves a little bit empty. Like even Charlie the Chocolate Factory, he's always never very good at that terrain. And when you get to, for example, in this film, I think like the structure, the behavior of the movie itself is like they trying to integrate Edward Scissorhands in their community to try to use him, and they themselves, although they have this outside kind of appearance of being very benevolent and nice and 50s and cookies and etc. All this wonderful house and colorful. What is implied is that their interior that gets revealed is very skeptical. I mean, you see it in the very beginning where you have this Avon lady selling her cosmetic stuff, and one of them is like, "Come on, Peg, I don't sell, I don't buy your stuff." It's just inherently skeptical, inherently. Okay, my changing look. I'm getting old. Is that what you mean? So they're inherently skeptical. While Edward, on the other hand, his interior, what comes out is beauty. What comes out of him, though his exterior is ugliness, what is implied is that he has all this beauty inside of him, on this innocent, ingenuine eye that creates these beautiful pieces of artwork, whether through their hair or their backyard and the greenery and such. But what is that interior really? It would be interesting if his character would evolve from this fanciful, comical mime into this more of a person, through the interactions that he has with Kim. And Kim doesn't really challenge that. I think sometimes Kim can be a little bit annoying because she could have more of an active role in saving him. For example, there's that discussion that she has with Jim, the bully, who is a jackass. So much so it's kind of a caricature of a jackass that you start to hate as a caricature. There's a moment where she confronts him and it's like, "You could have said it." "No, I couldn't have said it that he was working for you." Well, he could. You could have said something. I don't know why she doesn't say anything throughout to the very end. So she is relayed to this position of the damsel in distress that
She's super passive.
Edward needs to save, and she never takes an active role, which kind of annoys me. Just as a final point, the society, this little community, the way they behave as these hound dogs around them could have been put in question at the very end as I was always hoping for that end where they kind of self-reflect on themselves. I don't know how that would happen, but it would serve as a kind of last comment of the movie to help these, what was once normal transform into something else. I don't think that nothing changes in the end, basically. They're just like, "Oh, he's dead," and they all decide to retreat back to the way they were.
I think there's.
What do you
I think
think?
there's. I mean, overall maybe, but I don't think we can totally jump to that conclusion because supposedly he's dead, and I think at least the sort of main lady has sort of this look of oh, I actually got him killed because
You mean the Joyce lady, the pervert lady?
yes, yes,
Yeah.
no, she definitely has a look like oh, is dead? Oh, I didn't actually mean for this to happen. So there's definitely regret there, and
Yeah, sure.
I'm I think it's slight. It's it's not very. It's not obvious entirely, and it's not fully developed. But I think there's something to be said about the characters going through some sort of a little mindset change after his death or supposed death. But again, yeah, I mean this is at the very end, so we don't really know if this whole thing impacted them. But I do think it does because I mean at the end we're kind of building up to this idea that he's bringing the snow now and that the town is different, and I think there's this veil of Edward was here and perhaps something has been changed because of his passing here. So at least if not fully directly, I think it's somehow hinted at this idea
Oh,
that
for sure. I mean, I see a lot of those things as intentions, but then I'm not so sure if they effectively are put into practice. Like I get what they want. I don't know if that happens really. And then you, as a viewer, and as someone critiquing the film, you are divided because, oh, am I being too harsh with the film? But at the same time, I do feel that the film has a certain emptiness to it, and that same emptiness is what makes you like, did it accomplish or did it not accomplish? It's like it just passes by you, and it's like, oh, It's like it just passes so quick, the movie. It just has this overall lightness, in its plotting and its narrative, that you can't say anything about it. I think because it's a caricature, so you can't do anything, so you can't say it's meant to be light, it's meant to be a caricature, so you can't point fingers. That's I think that's almost
no one
the
said
behavior that the film had. No, that's
I
Preemptively,
said
preemptively
that's what
fighting.
I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, because it behaves like this caricature.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is because it behaves like this caricature, like this fairy tale. In some instances, you're almost like, can I point this at the movie, or is it meant to be as it is meant to be? With this.
you're at Royale, you can do everything.
Of course, but also, this raises an interesting point that I want to kind of bring with you. It behaves in a very similar way to The Night of the Hunter, and in that way, I understand the film, and I like the film. I like it fine, but it does bring the question: what is the better film at accomplishing what he wants to accomplish? Do you what do you think, or
It's
perhaps
Night
what
of
do you
the
think the Night
Hunter.
of the
Yes.
Hunter?
Night of the
Okay. What do you think are
Undeniable.
the differences? Where do you think the Night of the Hunter accomplishes best in, for example,
First,
Edward
like,
Scissorhands?
a main character that is a lot more interesting and complex for me, like to watch the
Has
priest.
in Robert Mitchum, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But even the relationship between the old lady and the kids towards the end of the film, like there's a lot more heart there, a lot more life.
Exactly.
I don't feel
So I
that
almost feel
here.
like we need a comparison to kind of put this into
Mhm.
question,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
movie.
yeah. No,
So
that's
I
a
think
good.
that it would help.
I wouldn't even have thought of Night of the Hunter, but that's a good, an interesting idea that you bring up.
but I think that it comes from the fact that Tim Burton, at least here, but I think maybe in other films, has this veil of meanness in some characters. You can't escape the fact that they're always very mean-spirited characters in his films, and so that just overwhelms the film and certain characters to the point where you can't just get overwhelmed with sweetness on this case of Johnny Depp's character. And I think in The Night of the Hunter it's very easy to see the sweetness of the situation, of the family, of the kids, and being a true force against the evil that is Robert Mitchum. And in Tim Burton you kind of have this aura of, as you said, darkness and death and this bully guy and the ladies and everything kind of, I don't know, it distorts a bit the lightness of the film, which is interesting as a sort of, to be able to accomplish this as a theme and as a vibe, the sort of weird lightness that we have with Tim Burton's films. But I think because of that, it's just intrinsic to the film that it can't fully reach the same tone that The Night of the Hunter, for example, does. Different things that they're trying to do as films and as sort of atmospheres.
I think it's just the way Tim Burton goes about, specifically in this film, inserting darkness. I don't know. Sometimes I'm not. I don't know. Like the women
You can't
being
quite
like.
put your finger on it.
Yeah, it's like the women being sort of perverted, for example. It's like, okay, it's funny sometimes, but I
It
don't
feels like
really
it's
care about it.
overridden with its quirkiness. It's so focused in being quirky and like comedic, at times that it forgets to bring a sort of development that I think, though Night of the Hunter shares that fairy tale quality, develops.
Yeah, yeah. And I could forgive that if the relationship between Edward and Kim was a bit more focused on and was more, there was a more interesting progress to it. But I think, there's two beautiful moments that you've described earlier, the one with the snow and the one with the hug. Great moments.
And the TV. I love the TV moment where he kind of
Yeah, yeah,
captures
as
these
well.
glimpses together from afar. That's great.
In between those moments, it's like, I don't know, I don't see much being developed that well. There's not, I don't feel like they're becoming closer. It just feels a bit, structured. There's this moment, now there's this moment, there's this moment, but the in between moments, at least I didn't feel when she says I love you. I was like, oh, you do? What? I don't feel that.
Exactly.
That's a
Since
bit much.
when?
I thought you
Yeah,
liked
that's
them,
true.
but love,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
a
yeah,
bit.
yeah. It feels like the film is forcing that, the damsel needs to fall by the hero kind of thing.
I think the film does a good point of detaching Kim from her boyfriend. I think it's well worked in terms of okay,
Yes.
yeah, she's clearly not liking him anymore. But I think from that to the point of liking Edward would be a bigger stretch and a bigger distance to go, and that I don't think is fully worked on, as you said. Because yeah, I mean, she just there's no real reason to have become so close to Edward, I think. So yeah, it's a bit. I wasn't completely, upset with it, but I do understand it.
And her boyfriend being such a, like, obviously he's a fucking idiot, a moron
Yeah,
jock.
yeah, yeah.
It just makes it even more, like, if it was a bit more intelligent sometimes and be like, it's a guy with scissor hands, like, he's a danger. He's never really like that. He's more just, oh yeah, let's make fun of him or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of annoying, and it just makes me like, why is she still with him? Just go away now. Whereas if
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
he was a bit more interesting as a character, the boyfriend, and she still was feeling attracted towards Edward and develop, you'd be like, okay, like there's a, despite her boyfriend being somewhat, maybe still an asshole sometimes, but being somewhat level-headed, she's still fascinated by this guy because of his uniqueness and because of his, out of placeness. But I don't really feel that. It feels like she's just, oh, my boyfriend is such an asshole. By comparison, Edward is better, which is the point the film is trying to make, like to be so obviously the difference between them. I don't think it benefits it. It just makes it, for me, more annoying. It makes it, yeah, it feel like a simple story, a simple fairy tale, but you can bring complexity to it.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. This
Yeah,
this brings
like
us to
Night of
the
the
to the
Hunter.
question itself, like what I was saying earlier in terms of I don't know how much can I critique this thing that it's light by nature. It's exactly that, because yes, it's a caricature, but in certain places you can insert complexity and develop moments and try to have, particularly in the later half where he has a relationship with this girl. And the thing is, you get the behavior and that this other point about intentions and if the intentions are well executed. And the end, Mike says, it leaves enough ambiguity, you know, when is ambiguity, and when is just work not done there, and just an emptiness, because yes, the woman at the end feels sorry that he died, that's readable, but then how much did the community change really? The structure itself of the movie, you understand the intention as well. Overall, what we have this oddball guy being inserted in this community. They try to change his outside look, try to make him look like everybody else. All the while that he completes a function that has very much to do with his scissors, right? Fulfilling these people's lives through these various means of the hairdresser salon. They try to incorporate him there in this kind of little capitalist little town 50s kind of consumer culture thing, of the image, the mall, like those kind of elements that he brings back from the 50s, a little bit of Tom Jones, he brings those things. But then, the natural route would be, and that's what the movie does, is that you will have someone that will actually pierce into the insides of Edward and find who is this person. And that comes in the form of Kim. But there you have it. Nothing is really done in that direction. She just comes at these points structurally in the story where supposedly they come together, but she never has like further interactions or a conversation with him. Like, what was like growing up all alone in that place? What did you read? We see a little bit of his bed, and he has all those cutouts. Maybe he could have talked about that. A little one chat about that, like something that actually made us see something bloom between them. There was like a sharing of vulnerabilities and experiences. And it's all related with that theft, that thing, that heist, that assault at his father's house, which I don't think it's quite enough. And in the end, it's almost if the film is saying that, oh, he should have stayed there all along, because he's just different, and sometimes we can change certain things. And okay, so that's it. But you don't feel ultimately that there was a change on this on the world, the normal world of the story, the default world of the fantasy, as it was presented in the beginning. The town is the same town. These people who essentially have the fatal flaw that is being judged here in this movie, which is shallowness, superficiality. Oh, I love my outside looks, but I have nothing to show for in my insides. That is not changed. The film is a lot of satire, but I don't see that satire actually functioning in the end as a way to change these people or make them self-reflect about their ways. The best he did was killing the guy. He killed him, but what did that do? I don't know. It was just You know,
Yeah, I even thought
I
there
don't know.
would be
It
a
brought
moment
justice.
brought
Just
justice. But
Punisher
like
justice.
early on, they even talk about, oh, I know a doctor who can give you hands or something like that. I
They
thought
very
that would
literally
be a
say, "But you wouldn't be yourself anymore." You know,
yeah.
the theme
But I
is
thought that would be. I expected that to be like a plot point, even like they actually go through it, give him hand or something, and he doesn't take to it, and then he's like, no, I want my hand. I like my scissor hands. It's who I am. I thought it would be even in that like in the
yeah,
simple fairy tale story. It feels like that would be a
yeah,
more
yeah.
interesting way of going about communicating him. Despite being different, he can still be proud of who he is. That's a very, a classic message you want to give to kids. But they don't really do that. They just throw him back in the castle and that's it. And he killed the
Yeah.
guy. And like, I don't know what's going on here. And also the beginning, I guess I had a different idea of what was going on. You see this woman go around selling the Avon things, and no one wants her. No one wants to talk to her. She feels very lonely. From my perspective, I thought she's very alone. And then she goes in the castle, sees this guy, and instead of running away like a more normal person probably would have, but she understands the context of this world,
Uh huh. Uh huh.
takes him in, she takes him to his house. And I was like, oh wow, she's a very lonely woman. She probably has no family, she has no husband, no nothing. And so this makes sense that she
Uh
would
huh.
take him in.
Uh
And then,
huh.
oh, here's my family, is my daughter, my son. What? Okay, I like this less now. This feels a little
Yeah.
like she, at least even in the context of the world, like I just want a little more logic to how people would
Mm-hmm.
behave.
Mm-hmm.
She takes him in and she's like, yeah, just go in that room, whatever. I'm gonna take a call. And it's like,
And it's
your
her
daughter
daughter's
has a
room.
water bed. Use your
It's true.
head for a second.
Oh my
Like
god.
this world,
It's true.
you don't have to be this stupid, even if it's a
Yeah.
simple world.
And knowing later on that they do have an extra bed in
In the
downstairs, so it's
couch,
like why?
yeah,
Yeah, no water
like
bed there. It's like
exactly. This is
yeah,
why.
it's basically giving way to this quirkiness. Oh, he's going to poke it later, and it's gonna be a thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I think sometimes the film, how should I put this? Puts the bull in front of the carriage. Like the old Portuguese saying would say.
Puts the scissors in front of the paper.
And the quirkiness and the style and the whimsicalness and all of that is put up front rather than these little nuances of storytelling. I think that's
I
basically
mean,
it.
and while I'm complaining, I do think, like in terms of character design, not a character design, in terms of world building, I think of Batman, and I'm like, I feel like that world is just so much more like detailed and complicated and filled with, I just it feels much more like a real world. This one, I don't know, it feels a bit naked for me, especially the suburbs.
And disconnected.
Yeah, disconnect.
The suburb feels like a set piece, and then the mall feels like another set piece. They're not
Yeah,
quite connected.
exactly. It feels very bare bones, and I don't know if it benefits the film to be like that. At least,
Very
I guess.
contained, yeah.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to. Not one. I expected, because it's Tim Burton. I guess I expected much more detail. Very naked, like the houses. They all look the same. Yeah, they look very ready-made. And again, even if that's intentional, I don't. I don't
Mm.
know. I expected some more detail, and then we don't spend that much time in the castle anyway. So, because that's where a lot of the beautiful design is, especially
Mm-hmm.
the caved in roof and the way she finds him
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
corner. I think that's very beautiful. And also on that note, I think the more interesting relationship in the whole film, and it's not seen that much, is between Vincent Price and Edward. I think that one has a lot more meat to it, because I mean it's sort of not that easy to fuck up that like creator and creation relationship. There's a very clear dynamic that you can establish that comes from from Frankenstein itself, that is inherently, it's interesting because you made something and it's so fucked up, and how do you fix it, how do you help it, and then you die as you're trying to help it. It's a great moment, as you were saying, because he's watching him die, and it's the person who can give you the thing that you wanted, which was hands, supposedly. So it's a very beautiful moment, and I think
And
it's
then
one
the
of the strongest.
inherent performances of Vincent Price and Johnny Depp. Oh, there you go. I mean, there's such heavy lifting from those performances. Johnny Depp is so perfect for this role, in with those puppy eye dogs in like constant despair, constant like please, please, please help me. This kind of like, you know, his eyes are like the entrance to his soul. It's you just want to hug him. And then Vincent Price, of course, he has such charisma that is, is so endearing. I'm almost left speechless every time I see that man on screen.
But I think just going back to the point of him sort of at the end of the story returning to the castle and it not going in another direction where we see him, you know, whatever. I wasn't entirely bothered by that because to me it's kind of, giving the message that he's very misunderstood and everything that he does, people keep thinking he was doing something much worse, that all of his intentions were evil or to hurt people or whatever. And I think, I mean, if you're going for that, if you're telling that perspective, I think you really have to go for it. And I think it can only end with him going back to the castle sort of in isolation, because everything he does, it keeps entering him in a spiral of being misunderstood and everyone interpreting things
Yeah, I agree with
poorly.
that.
So
I totally agree with that, and I don't disagree with the ending itself. It's just how we get there that I think could be
same.
better done.
Because there's not, as we were saying, there's not really a rejection by Edward of the like an attempted assimilation. Like they don't try to make him normal, and then he rejects it and goes to the castle, or he's thrown in the castle. Both him and Kim feel very passive, like just kind of going around, being thrown around. Edward makes more sense since he's not a very developed human, because he's not a human, but like he doesn't have a lot of power of choice. He gets pushed around a lot. But even Kim is very much like that as well. Both of them.
For example, a very interesting idea that could have worked was Kim developing that sense of agency in him. For example, their interactions could be him essentially giving what is missing in him, which is his heart, so to speak, his soul. That sense of agency or of initiative. What do you want, Edward? Kind of that. And that could be endearing. The same way that Vincent Price was about to give him something that was very useful, his hands, which is the physical, visible thing. The other thing that could be missing and that could be interpreted as a suggestion in the film was perhaps Kim giving him that consciousness, almost like, the Pinocchio becoming a boy. That's Kim's gift to him, which doesn't really happen in the film. But we can also talk about Tim Burton has more of a expansively throughout his oeuvre. What is your relationship with him since
Not much.
Kitties? Not much?
Not much.
All right.
I mean, I don't know, what have I seen even? I never liked his
I always like,
version.
not much.
Not much. Like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, I never cared for it when I was a kid. It was fucking disturbing. It was like very weird. I don't want to watch
That's what
it.
I liked.
yeah, I like that film
Yeah,
actually.
I liked it. Me and Mike liked it. I mean, nowadays I disliked it because I watched it recently and I thought this is crap. Because I watched the old one, the classic, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I think it's just called Wonka or Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I think that it's a reversal. That film has terrible directing, terrible visuals, and the story's not that great. What saves it is really also it was very very cheap, like low budget production. But what saves it is Gene Wilder. Gene Wilder saves that. That Gene Wilder is the very reason why that movie is like something. He's amazing. Then Tim Burton cures a lot of it because his remake is like, oh great, visuals. It's like amazing. Like that was amazing about Tim Burton's film. The visuals are like, whoa, finally, great, dark, amazing. Like I see, we go to India even. A little bit racist there though. Let's forget that. Anyway, but amazing visuals. But then Johnny Depp has Wonka is like, oh god, no, this is not as I remember it. He's so bad. He's so annoying. He's so annoying throughout that film. I did not like it. And I can like, when I was a kid, when I saw Johnny Depp as Willy Wonka, I was like, that man is amazing. He's amazing. It's almost like an attraction. I feel so attracted by that man. He's amazing. Like, who is that man? So I always wanted to kind of follow in his footsteps, like Jack Sparrow, whatnot.
But
He's a quirky guy.
I never thought it was annoying.
Oh, when I was a kid, I didn't think about it. When I was a kid, I didn't think about it certainly. But growing up, like
No, but even
watching
now,
recently, fair enough.
I've watched.
This is me, like.
I mean, I don't know when I've watched it, but probably in the last 5 years, and I'm sure that I didn't find him annoying.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Like
because
no.
I don't know. It's just he goes beyond this barrier of annoying where it's so unique. It's interesting,
Okay.
and
Fair.
only an actor like Johnny Depp can achieve that level.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Where to me everything is working in this sort of characterization of his hair and his the way he speaks. I don't know. It just builds to this such a strange character that you can't help but think, oh, okay, this is kind of cool.
In due fairness, you know what inspired himself to be the way he is. He was trying to aim at those children kind of show hosts like Blue, talking like this children, like and being like a overgrown child with that hair and everything. So within that frame, it makes sense. I guess that was just my innate reaction the first time I revisited the movie. But yeah, and I remember one of my very first kind of instance of meeting the man, meeting his films was The Corpse Bride when I was a kid. I really wanted to see it. My parents did not allow me to see the kids' movie that was The Corpse
Wow.
Bride, But years later, like when I was, I don't
When I
know
was
how old I
20.
was then. No, it was like 12 or something. I saw it on FNAC and I said, I was with this British dude who was dating like my dad's cousin, and said, so Thomas, what do you want for Christmas or something? Alan, I want that. His name was Alan. Alan, I want that. And I was pointing at Corpse Bride. This is funny, like this kid, 12-year-old speaking in English. Alan, give me Corpse Bride. So that was it. My revenge on my parents at 12 years old, wanting to see Corpse Bride. And a beautiful film. I think Corpse Bride is one of his last great films. That and Sweeney Todd. So around like 2006, 2008, 7. Kind of those last 2 to 3 years. Because then he became more Dumbo and whatnot. I mean, it just became not as interesting. What did he do recently? He did Wednesday, and then he did Beetlejuice. Yeah, I saw Beetlejuice
I haven't seen it.
recently.
Which one?
Didn't like it. The original. So I didn't watch the second because I thought I'm not gonna like this much. And I found out that he's dating Monica Bellucci, Tim Burton and Monica Bellucci. I'm like, sorry, what? That was
Right
like,
now.
wow. No, that's amazing. Way to go.
That's amazing.
But this is just an odd pairing. I was not picturing this, Tim Burton. Just, you see her with Vincent Cassel and okay, French man, sexy, these stereotypes. You have these stereotypes in your head. But then you think about the oddball from the dark, whimsical movies. But yeah, good for him. But yeah, Beetlejuice I didn't like, but it was kind of the thing. Like I clearly remember thinking, if I watched it as a kid, I would dig it. Yes, being this my first time, it's one of those situations where I don't get it. Because you need to grow up with it. A little bit not like Narnia. It's the same thing actually. Because I saw it as a kid, it has a special place in my heart, and it's nostalgia fueled. But today I'll be like, what? Nah, it's like there's an 80s movie that lives in my child kind of imaginarium that, and in every 80s kid, although I'm not from the 80s, that is a Never Ending Story. I don't know if you know that one, Never Ending Story, with all the puppets and etc. And I saw it as a teen, and it was amazing. It was in my grandma's house, this very old place, nothing to do in the summer. Popped up. Me and my sister were just glued to the screen and watching these 80s, and it's just all the more weird because of the puppetry. You have this big old dragon and these amazing sets, all like tangible, not CGI filled. And it's original, and it's an original story. This kid that goes inside the book that he reads, and he becomes a knight, whatnot. Anyway, it's really cool. It's like one of those movies that are companion pieces to A Dark Crystal, which is another 80s movie that lives in the memory of those kind of Gen X kids. But yeah, that's cool. But it's very much to do with, I saw it as a kid, moves on. Beetlejuice, not so much. Yeah, do you have any experiences like that? Movies are not from your like day and age, like 2000s, but are from another decade that hold a special place in your heart. Don't say Home Alone. It needs to be fantasy or whatever. Or maybe
Why?
not.
Why?
Let's be general.
Why? Yeah, why?
It's in keeping
No,
with what
because
we're
I
discussing
said so.
today. Because I said so.
You
It's in
and
keeping
your
with what we're
rules.
discussing today. Narnia, Beetlejuice, Edward Scissorhands, Never Ending Story. You see?
I don't know. I
and I
mean,
don't have.
You don't have it.
I can make the case that the first Harry Potter films are not from our generation.
What?
2000.
No, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense.
Do you
What?
think I
What do
was
you mean?
watching the first Harry Potter in the theater with like
I
3
was.
years old or 4 years old?
Oh yeah, I
No,
wasn't watching the first.
obviously I wasn't.
Yeah. Oh look, I saw the third one in 2004, and I remember it. I remember the time when it was the Polar Express, when it was out there.
It's
I remember posters in
2004.
the cinema when I was
We're
there.
5 years
Yeah.
old.
But no,
Yeah,
of course,
if you were
the first
watching
one and the
Prisoner of Azkaban with 5 years old, you weren't understanding anything. I'm sorry.
But I remember that. I remember when I didn't have, and I was making the collection as well at that time. So I was very aware of the movies. The movies I have on DVD are movies from the time that I bought at the time upon release. Like, let's sneak it and add to the collection. So it was something that I was very aware and accompanying as it went. Of course, the first and second movie, and I had the first one on VHS. Like, my parents bought it for me. It wasn't like a request of mine. They inherently bought it. Oh, he will like this. And so that was the inception of it. I saw it on VHS and I kept along kind of adding the others. So Goblet of Fire was very much on my consciousness. I saw the fifth one on cinema, the sixth, there you start, but it is within your age. You don't need to be a teenager for that.
It's true. I get what you mean. It's like movies after you were born, even if like obviously you didn't watch them upon release, they're gonna be more prevalent on TV. But the thing is, like Home Alone, it's not my time, but it's a movie. It's everyone's time because it's always on TV every year.
Exactly, that's what I mean.
Sort of arbitrary.
I've never been very attracted to it neither. Like I guess one of the situations I missed it as a kid. I don't know if I'm gonna have. And I can't believe like I saw a little bit some Christmas ago because I catch somebody else watching it at home, and I was like,
I would never watch myself.
I would never watch myself, of course. It's beneath
I was with
me.
someone.
I promise. I have a witness.
In court. But the thing is, like, I was watching that little bit, and I was amazed at the fact that, oh my god, I thought the whole movie was just him and the thieves, like, raiding the house. I didn't realize that a whole chunk of the movie, just him wandering the streets and meeting this homeless guy at the church and whatnot. I was like, really? I thought it was just the fun part. And
Really?
just,
There's a story?
stuff.
And a
There's
development?
Story?
Yeah, I thought
It's
I
not
guess
just
because
a
I had
sketch.
exactly. I thought it was. I had that baggage from childhood of seeing these little bits were the fun bits. And
It's the
I
third
inherently
act,
thought that the whole
best part.
I thought the whole movie was that, which is a bit weird when you think about it. The whole movie being that.
And that's all for today. If you'd like to reach out and suggest a film for the next episode, you can find us on the podcast official Instagram and website pages. Feel free to subscribe, share this episode, or simply give us a like. That's how our podcast can grow ever more groovy. And if you're on YouTube and want to see more videos like this, check out this next video right here. Thanks for listening, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.